My name is Henry Francis. I am a AWS Technical Account Manager for Silicon Overdrive. And I want to talk to you about running EKS. It's not going to be a sales talk. It's how financial institutions actually, how they need to run it. It's not being a highly available, but audible and secure and predictable. And also, how do you scale in a financial way? AWS shows you today how do you actually deploy EKS. I'm going to talk to you about what happens after that, when regulators get involved, when auditors and a dozen deployment teams get involved, what happens then? So on the agenda today, I'll do a very brief on the scope and assumption for this talk. We'll do a technical deep dive and look into a few problems. We'll find a solution for each of these problems briefly, and we'll talk about the kind of key learnings we experience on that. So this can take a very much nasty turn into a 2-day long boring talk, and we're not going to do that. I'll stay focused on the operation realities of running EKS and the technical aspects of it. I'm not going to show you how to set up EKS or how to run Kubernetes basics. I think most of them you should already know. So, getting EKS running, that's the easy part. We all get EKS up very quickly. Teams are deploying and everything looked fine. The first problem didn't come from Kubernetes. They came from the questions we couldn't answer comfortably. The first problem started when using shared clusters, namespaces per team, network policies, standard model, which is technically correct. The issues showed up when compliance asked which team is responsible for what and the impact they have on each other. Answering that with precise was very much harder than expected, and I can see some people agree with that. Nothing obviously was broken, which actually made it so much worse. A system that works, but it was difficult to explain, review, and trust. That was the difficult part. We observed several problems with RBAC complexities and unclear blast radiuses. I think that is what we can all relate to is unclear blast radiuses. We don't know what's the impact of the problem. We fixed the first problem by setting explicit cluster boundaries, moving multiple clusters and simplifying things be much more easier. Cluster boundaries become governance boundaries, which was much easier to explain and much easier to audit. Also, separation on account level and defined clear ownerships on the cluster level became a lot easier to explain to the people asking the weird questions. The second problem was with identity. Some people in the room will know today AWS Auth config map was fine when you started off on, but at scale, it became your bottleneck. Roles got broader, changes required multi-team coordination, and access reviews took a long time. The separation was critical because we had to separate humans and workloads because they have different access patterns and different audit requirements, and treating them differently reduces the risk as well as the audit noise. As you can see, there's no shared human roles in these diagrams. There's time-bound human access, which is critical, and dedicated workload identities made things a lot easier for workloads. Network policies were necessary, and they were hard reasons about doing audits. Being visible was much greater than all the rules implemented. Visibility was key in this scenario. In practice, simpler boundaries were much easier to trust than deep nested network rules. What we ended up with, we stopped relying on manual reviews. Admission control gave us the consistent enforcement points, and policies became code. which we can review like anything else in our pipelines. If we look at that, how that will kind of the steps that we will need to take for this process to continue, you need to implement guardrails. And you implement guardrails with the admission control. You can run the normal CI with kubectl, kubectl, however you want to pronounce it, and you run that on your admission controller. We are presented with a clear choice, allow or reject this change, and that would be then submitted to your EKS cluster. Now the fun part, auditors. We all love a good audit. So this was the real stress test for this. Simplified logs were not accepted as evidence because it was too simplified. The evidence was scattered all over the place. We had no idea who changed, what changed, and when they changed. And auditors became the bane of our existence. So to keep auditors happy, we use Git as a source of truth. Inside our CI/CD, we had approval records, which means we can show and we can tell people, here is the approved record. The EKS was then updated during the runtime stack, and we were left with immutable logs that you can use as evidence. This is a very important point to make. Immutable logs can be used, not a simplified log. Auditors do accept immutable logs. Clear ownership reduced friction between audit findings. Everyone knew their responsibility and everyone knew the scope. The platform team looks at the nuts and bolts, the clusters, the guardrails, all of those things. But the product teams take on the risk, the configuration, and their workloads. So same as AWS with a shared responsibility model, similar to this where the platform and the product team kind of split their load on the responsibility model. What we want to say to the regulators, they don't care about your Kubernetes internals. They care about control, traceability, and evidence. Once we mapped their questions to a platform control, discussions became much more straightforward. The table will show you 4 main questions they will ask. And each question will be answered with a matching platform control. Each question will have enough information, not too much, not too little, because if you give them too much, you confuse them. If you give them too little, they ask more questions. EKS gives you a very strong perimeter. FinTech forces you to build trust, boundaries, and evidence around them. The work really starts when the cluster is actually live. And that's it. Thank you so much for the time. Enjoy the rest of the masterclass and have a good day.